The statistical truth is that in today's day, the majority of world-class big game animals are harvested by guys that are one, lucky enough to draw spectacular tags, or by guys who are blessed enough or who have worked hard enough in their lives to have a pile of cash to spend on hunting. I don't hold judgment on this at all. These hunts can still be crazy difficult, but the fact remains that a hard to get tag or a lot of cash are prerequisites to being in the running. However, mule deer break the mold here, and that's why there are so many of us obsessed with hunting them. Behemoth mule deer are consistently killed in low point units all over Colorado, 0 point units, 2 point units, that sort of thing. There are a ton of tags available for these hunts, yet these big bucks make it through until some savvy hunters get a hold of them. Every single one of you guys can go after the world's largest mule deer each and every year if that's what you want to do. Hence, the obsession with big mountain mule deer bucks is always going to be there, and in a lot of ways, it's the merit-based system of big game hunting. In this video, I'm going to show you guys a framework that allows you to hunt world-class deer each year, and I'll also give you some tips on improving your odds while you're on those hunts. If you have no clue who I am, my name is Cliff Gray. I built, owned, operated, and sold some of the largest wilderness businesses in North America. My insights in these videos are based on that data set, and all I hope, guys, is that you find them useful. Subscribe to the channel, and you can get on my newsletter at pursuitwithcliff.com. Just a side note, guys, I really appreciate all the comments I've been getting recently. It's truly motivating, and I read every single one of them. A lot of you guys have some great insights to share, and I love it. All right, guys, so let's get to the point. First, let's break down picking an area. The obvious thing to figure out is where the genetics for big deer are. It turns out this is crazy easy. Not all areas will produce 200-inch deer or even 180-inch deer. The genetics just aren't there. So open up a Boone and Crockett record book, or you can just Google it. This is a 5-minute project, but it's worth it. Find the counties that have produced a handful of big deer in the past decade. In most states, these counties are going to be grouped together. Where I live and guided most of my adult life is a perfect example. Eagle, Garfield, Pitkin, and Summit counties, a cluster of counties here in the mountains of Colorado, they have big deer genetics, okay? And it's a big deer kind of cluster, all right? And that's public information. I'm not giving it anything out. But you'll find that in other states and in other parts of Colorado. So just a quick caveat here, and honestly, I find this shit kind of hilarious, but on Instagram or other social media sites, those sites may have you thinking that genetics are grossly improving all over the West, but really they aren't. What it is this hunter's ability to take pictures. You know, the nose down, arm out, fisheye lens pics. These pictures create images of 168-inch deer that look like they're 200-inch deer and 30 inches wide, okay? You can tell a lot of time because the fork development doesn't match the picture or whatever, but really I don't care. I'm just saying don't use that as a metric for choosing out an area, choosing an area that has big mule deer genetics. They're historically really the same areas. Next, on narrowing down an area to start, you have to view chasing big mule deer as a multi-year pursuit. The number one way to not kill big deer is to save up 25 to 30 preference points in Colorado and then go hunting one time in one of these ridiculously hard units to draw. The unit I live in, the unit I'm sitting in right now, the great Unit 44 of Colorado, probably the hardest mule deer tag to draw on earth, the percentage of slammer deer is high, but it's not a given that you're even going to see them if you only hunt here once, okay? Particularly if it's your first time hunting mule deer in the mountains. Instead, you need to pick an area that you can get a tag in each year or at least every couple years. This allows you to learn how to get around an area, know the best glassing spots, and learn the deer migration paths. That's something I'm really going to pound on in this video. So first you have to understand some basic mountain mule deer dynamics here before I explain the different multi-year approaches. In the summer, the bucks are in bachelor groups, growing their antlers, hanging in open areas, and living within a pretty tight pattern, right? A lot of the deer go up high elevation, but not always. But they're usually sticking to a 1 to 3 mile kind of living area. Then they shed their velvet around September 10th, and in the areas here I've guided in Colorado, they beeline to dark hidden areas and hole up at this point, hanging in smaller groups, and a lot of the real big deer will actually go solo at that point. At this point, mid-September until about October 20 to 25th, Big bucks can be damn near impossible to find. They stay in a super tight pattern. I'm guessing, sub a mile, mile and a half range. They get in the timber, they get in small enclosed timbers, nasty shoots, timber fingers, stuff like that. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is difficult to glass, and they've got everything they need right there, so they're not moving around a lot. All else held equal, this is the hardest time to kill big mule deer, right? Is that pre-period of time between shed and velvet and when they start to move. Just as a caveat within a caveat here, if you can locate these secluded big buck holes, make some notes. Big bucks are just like brook trout when it comes to these little living spots. If you kill one in a spot like this time of year, or you just find one living in a spot, a lot of times you're out elk hunting that time of year, check these spots in the future years. And a lot of times in the future years, you'll find that exact same buck there, or if he's long gone, you'll find a new buck took his spot. There's just a set of variables in these spots that pulls in these big deer. So just like those brook trout, they find a little rock in a creek, you'll catch a good one there, and then you'll come back a week later and there'll be another good brook trout there right in that little eddy behind that big rock. It's just a set of variables that draws in big bucks in the mountains into the same kind of little hidey holes, all right? So make notes on those if you're out in the woods that time of year, pre-October 25th. Okay, so back to the dates. Now from October 25th to November 15th, bucks start moving. Big snow will move them earlier in this period, but even without snow, they're going to start moving by November 1st, from what I've seen. Some mountain bucks got to move 5 miles during this period. Others are going to move 40 miles. But all else held equal, this is when big bucks start showing some susceptibility to harvest, but it still takes some work, all right? Okay, by November 10th to November 15th, these bucks will be on their rutting grounds, or they're going to be right on the fringes of it. All else held equal, this time of year, this is the easiest time to kill big deer. Okay, so back to the tag strategy, all right, and this is going to tie it all together. The tag market and the draw, the state draws are pretty efficient. Tags before October 25th are easy to draw in a lot of mountain units and in a lot of mountain units with great genetics. Tags between October 25th and November 10th are reasonable to draw, and then rut tags after November 10th, November 15th jump way up in difficulty. We're talking 5 to 8 times as difficult to draw. Okay, so there are a couple different approaches here that you can take. One, you can pick a unit and season that you can draw with 0 points and hunt it every year on roughly the same dates, all right? There are a bunch of units in Colorado like this, and there's other opportunities in Idaho, Wyoming where you can do this. And these areas will produce 200-inch deer. The tags you can draw are usually earlier season, before the deer are moving or rutting. During that period of time I said was difficult, and additionally the access is going to be difficult. We're talking wilderness areas, Forest Service with limit roads, private land that limits access, that sort of thing. This is a great opportunity for big time backpackers or guys that pack animals. Another option is you can find a unit that takes a couple years to draw, and then you can try to augment it with inexpensive landowner tags, just depending on your budget. A lot of guys do that with success. The last option is my favorite, and guys that execute it will have a hell of a good time hunting. And most of the guys that consistently kill a few big deer over the years, or a bunch of big deer over the years, do this. So typically a guy can pull this strategy off in this regard. Get a second season tag, or a tag that's easy to get, a leftover tag, 0 point tag, hunting, that October 20th to 25th time frame. Then every couple years, draw a third season tag, hunting a little bit later dates, hunting that November 5th through November 18th time frame. Season dates also shift a bit each year based on the state, so you can adjust when you go earlier season versus when you go later season based on those fish and game dates. Hunt the easier to draw tag on the later dates, hunt the harder to draw tag on the earlier dates, so you can really end up with an overlap of dates in your year-to-year hunting cycle. Right? You're kind of hunting the same dates every year. That's a good way to gain knowledge. If the draw statistics don't quite allow you to pull this off, you can also hunt 2 different adjacent units over the years. Between the differential in season tag availability for the certain dates and the difference between the unit tag availability, you can figure something out. I've seen a lot of guys do this, and I've seen some pretty famous guys do this actually. Those adjacent units, you can hunt the same roads, you can hunt the same migration corridors, and you can even use some of the same glassing points, all right? So you're learning about the other unit when you're hunting the adjacent unit. That's a great strategy to get yourself being in the right spot year over year. Okay, so we've covered where to hunt and how to set up a multi-year plan for hunting mule deer. Now, I'll close on some more tactical advice that you can build on as you hunt these big bucks. First, touching on hunting big deer before they move in their pre-migration hidey holes before October 25th. As I mentioned before, it's tough. Just because you aren't seeing them at this period of time doesn't mean shit during this phase, all right? You have two options, and both are hard and psychologically trying. One, get the really good glassing spots and painfully glass the thick stuff, the timber, the nasty terrain, the little bitty meadows in the timber, that sort of stuff. You're generally not going to find big bucks in a wide open basin, or on a 300-yard wide avalanche chute, the kind of shit you see on videos. You see that rarely this time of year, all right? The other approach you can take is you can track around, bush rack around with your eyes to the ground looking for fresh buck tracks, fresh buck beds, that sort of thing. And then once you find some of that kind of sign, wrap around it and get up high and get close where you're glassing close, but you can meticulously glass that stuff. A lot of times you can pick up a buck that way. Now, jumping past the movement phase, we'll get back to that. Let's talk about hunting big deer in the rut, all right? We'll get it out of the way. This is hunting deer after November 10th or 15th. This late season stuff is fun, guys, and generally easy. Glass up does and wait for big bucks to show. That's basically the strategy. Tactics and skills aren't limiting hunters here on these hunts. The problem is the big giant bucks are just rare, in terms of probability, and now you're adding it to the fact that these rut tags are rare. So combining the two, if you take this approach just trying to hunt them that time of year, you're going to kill less big deer, all right? Rut hunts are good for guys that, just want to have fun on a hunt and have a, kind of a lucky opportunity to harvest a big deer. You aren't going to be able to consistently hunt this way. It's very draw dependent, and in a few places, it's very big money dependent. So what we're really talking about when we're talking about everyone having the ability to pursue mammoth mule deer each year, we're talking about hunting the transition from October hidey holes to the mid-November rut. The number one skill and knowledge base you can develop here is figuring out the movement corridors of deer. Here I'll give you guys a couple anecdotes just to confirm this for you. Years ago, I was in the office of a mule deer biologist, and he had his computer open to Google Earth, and it had a bunch of GPS color data plotted on it. Given I knew the geography of that area, I'd traveled it on foot a bunch, I was stunned at the consistency of the paths of these collared deer. It was wild to see. And a couple other things kind of were striking to me too. One, deer would use the same path year after year, like really consistently. And these are essentially not just, not the same drainage, like literally the same trail. The other thing is deer will go up and down as they migrate. It's not like they shoot straight down drainages. They'll actually go over ridges, and a lot of times they hug terrain, as they wrap around terrain, all right? Before I'd seen that data, I always thought they just went down. But over the years measuring for Boone and Crockett, the majority of the hunters that I measured more than one, say 180-inch deer for, or several 200-inch deer for over a few years, these guys killed the different bucks from the same ambush or glassing spot, sometimes even the exact same rock. They were hunting these corridors, really the choke points within the corridor that they had figured out. So, jumping into my experience in my Colorado outfitting business, we killed something like 100, 120 bucks in the past 8 years of operation, where we were really hunting mule deer harder. At least 90 of those bucks, including all but one or two of the bucks over 170, were killed within shooting distance of what I would call the two main movement corridors in that hunting area. Okay, so the point is, you gotta key in on finding these movement paths, all right, these corridors. So here's the trick, guys. The easiest way for you to find these spots is for some idiot to tell you where one is. I'm dead serious, and I'm also dead serious that you should keep these spots completely to yourself. Just a couple added guys can decrease the quality of deer moving off of one of these paths big time. You have to remember that yes, these deer might be coming from 30 miles away, but it's the same population moving on that corridor year after year. It might be a micro population of deer, right? 80, 90 deer with only 10, 15 adult bucks. A little more harvest makes a huge difference when you're focusing on big deer. So this is exactly why you will see 2 or 3 huge deer come out of the exact same spot in one year. We're talking about, the bottom third of, X drainage, all right? And then for the next 4 or 5 years, you won't see any big deer out of that area. I saw this happen a ton of times in the Vail, in the Vail Valley. There are micro populations of deer moving through little slots in the Continental Divide, coming out of basically unhuntable country. Their travel path goes through unnoticed for a few years. They get big. It only takes 3 or 4 years to go unnoticed. You get huge in this part of the world. And then 3 or 4 guys or a couple guys figure them out. Game over for the quality of that small population of deer, all right? So the point is, figure this stuff out and keep it to yourself. If you hunt these units year over year, you're gonna run into some of these corridors just by exposing the country via glassing, right? You're just gonna run into seeing deer where they move, all right? But here's some ideas where to start. Look for country that's a mix of browse, mahogany, bitterbrush, sagebrush, oak brush, and avoid spending a lot of time looking at south-facing country that's choked up with old-growth juniper. That country is just really not great habitat. I'm going to jump into a couple videos here, guys, that kind of gives you an idea of what kind of habitat you're looking for when you're looking for the type of country that these deer move through. This is the type of browse you're looking for with mule deer. There's mahogany, serviceberry, kind of sparse cedar, cedar, juniper. But this is the kind of stuff you want. You don't want it to be completely choked off by juniper. In short, even when they're moving, deer stick to good habitat and feed. And if you guys want a real detailed look at that, check out my other video on the channel that goes through the different feed sources for elk, bears, and deer. I go into the detail and show each different plant. You might find that helpful. The other thing I've noticed on these corridors is the tighter the elevation grade between timber, aspen, and this browse country, the more likely deer will be moving through it. Deer like the wrap terrain, they like the wrap hillsides that have timber on the top, aspen shoots, and then typical winter browse in the bottom third of the country. It kind of makes sense why they have access to all of what they need, but you're really gonna see them move through that country. And the other thing is they're pretty huntable in that type of country. The other telltale sign is the little groups of local does along a natural terrain feature, right? If you're spending a lot of time in an area, you'll know what I'm talking about. These are the doe groups you see in the same spots year round across elevation. For whatever reason, these groups of 2 to 4 does will plot out the movement path of a larger population of deer. It's almost like these little does just got lazy on the way up and they decided that they had what they needed, so they stuck along the trail. They're kind of the blaze marks of the whole corridor. So keep that in mind. If you're spending time in an area during the summer, those little groups of does will show you the path. The other thing to think about when you're looking for these corridors is look for stuff that's below massive summer range for deer. And this stuff needs to be secluded and inaccessible. If you look at most of the country that produces big monster deer in Colorado, it sits below really rugged mountain ranges, heavily timbered wilderness, that sort of thing. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of acres that's really pretty darn tough to hunt. Okay guys, my last big tip for finding these pathways for big deer, and the reason I decided to put this video together right now in the spring green up, and that's that this time of year in the mountains, it's probably the best time to locate these movement corridors. It's a great time to get up in the mountains, the weather's nice, and you can do a ton of glassing. As that green grass greens up in these corridors, you're gonna see the deer move the exact same path they came down November, except for they're just headed the other direction. You aren't necessarily gonna be able to identify big bucks. They got limited antler growth right now, but seeing how the deer trail out on these paths is super obvious this time of year. Vegetation is limited and the deer stick out like sore thumbs. The other thing is they've been starving, through the winter and early spring, so they're feeding all day. So you can actually glass during, midday. You don't have to be up super early to get some productivity out of this, all right? But if you go to those spots where those corridors are, you're gonna see these deer moving like caribou across the mountainsides. All right, guys, I hope this stuff is helpful to you guys on your pursuit for big deer. Big mule deer are a really special species, one that breaks the mold in a lot of ways, and with very little exception, a guy with a bunch of big mule deer under his belt is typically a hell of a good hunter, and the other thing is he's had a blast hunting over the years. If you have anything to add based on your own experience chasing big bucks, please leave it in the comments, and like always, guys, thanks for checking out the video.